Letterboxd.
I have never seen a video nasty. I wouldn't. I have far too much.
But how can you judge on a video nasty?
Oh,
You've never
easy.
seen one.
Look, if somebody tells me, as we get these reports in from Europe, from America, and from this country, that a particular video nasty contains that, and that, I actually don't need to see visually what I know is in that film.
What if one of your favorite horror movies became someone's blueprint for murder? It's been one of the oldest debates in society about horror films. Do violent movies create violent people?
Of course, we are talking about films that show in great detail mutilation, sadism, and this can come as a terrible shock, particularly to a young person. And it does have effect on youngsters, as indeed it has an effect on adults.
For decades, politicians, parents, and media watchdogs have pointed the finger at horror films whenever a shocking crime hits the headlines. But most horror fans know the truth, and that isn't really that simple. Millions of people watch horror movies every year. Some, like me, consume horror content on the daily. We watch slashers, supernatural films, and psychological thrillers without ever hurting anyone. But every once in a while, a killer emerges who becomes obsessed with the film where fiction and reality begin to blur together. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Pop 5. This is Dave from Nerdbox, and today we are looking at 5 horrifying cases where killers claimed inspiration from horror movies.
Dumb kid.
At least I'm not afraid of ghosts.
Friday the 13th. When people think about horror icons, few are more recognizable than Jason Voorhees. The hockey mask, the machete, the silent stalking. Jason became one of the defining symbols of horror throughout the 1980s. And unfortunately for one young man, his obsession was bringing that fantasy into real life. His name was Mark Branch, and at first glance, Branch appeared completely ordinary. He worked as a grocery store clerk in Greenfield, Massachusetts. He rented horror movies constantly. He spent his free time immersed in slasher films. But behind that seemingly normal exterior was a dangerous fixation.
It's a homicide. The victim had multiple stab wounds. They could not have been self-inflicted.
On October 24th, 1988, Branch transformed himself into Jason Voorhees. Literally, he went full cosplay in order to fulfill a dark fantasy. His victim was 18-year-old college student Sharon Gregory. The murder scene was horrifying. Gregory's body was discovered in her bathtub by her identical twin sister, Cheryl. She had suffered devastating injuries to her chest, abdomen, and head. After the murder, Branch disappeared. What followed was a month-long manhunt that terrified a community. Schools were cautious, Halloween events were canceled, residents locked their doors, and people began claiming to have spotted Branch lurking throughout all of Western Massachusetts. But here's the interesting thing. The deeper the investigators dug, the more disturbing the entire picture became. In fact, one local video store employee who knew Branch described his rental habits as being simply chilling. Strictly gore, period. The gorier, the better. When police searched his home, they discovered dozens of horror films, stacks of true crime books, knives, hockey masks, and a machete. It was like walking into a lair of someone trying to become a slasher villain. But the strangest detail in this entire case was Sharon Gregory herself. You see, Gregory had been writing a psychological profile on a would-be killer, and that would-be killer would be Branch himself. According to investigators, Branch learned of that profile and became obsessed with obtaining it. because he didn't like what she had written about him. Now, nearly a month after the murder, Branch was discovered hanging from a tree in nearby Buckland. Authorities ruled it a suicide, but local rumors persist to this day. Some residents believe vigilante justice may have found him first. Whether that's true or not remains to be a mystery.
According to the coroner, the body was there since day one, probably the same day that he killed the girl.
But what isn't a mystery is that Branch had become so consumed by his horror fantasies to the point where Jason Voorhees was no longer just a movie character anymore. He wanted to become him. Scream. While Friday the 13th defined the 1980s slasher boom, Scream reinvented the entire genre in the late 90s. The film was smart, self-aware, funny, and terrifying. But while audience saw the satire, two teenagers in California allegedly saw something else, a blueprint for murder. In January 1998, 16-year-old Mario Padilla and his 14-year-old cousin Samuel Ramirez carried out a crime that shocked the nation. Their victim was Padilla's own mother, Gina Castillo. According to investigators, the murder wasn't spontaneous. It had been planned for years. Padilla later admitted that Scream and Scream 2 had heavily influenced his thinking. The pair allegedly planned to purchase Ghostface costumes and electric voice changers similar to those featured in the films. Their goal was to create their own real-life horror scenario, and the attack was brutal. Using multiple knives and a screwdriver, Padilla stabbed his mother while Ramirez restrained her. One of the most heartbreaking moments came during Gina Castillo's 911 call. As she fought for her life, she told dispatchers, "My son, he just stabbed me." Now, honestly, it's really difficult to imagine anything more insane, but the investigation uncovered even darker plans. Authorities had found evidence that the teenagers were planning on killing several additional people. One target reportedly resembled Drew Barrymore, whose shocking opening death in Scream had become iconic. At the trial, direct discussion of Scream was largely excluded, despite both teenagers having already admitted the films influenced them. Psychologist Madeline Levine later summarized the controversy perfectly. She argued that while movies don't create murders, they can provide a script for someone already looking for one. And that's the key distinction. Millions of people have watched Scream for entertainment, but these two teenagers saw something completely different from all of us.
He's sick, for fuck's sake. You've seen one too many movies.
Nah, Sid, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative. Stop it, Billy, would you, all right? I can't take anymore. I'm feeling a little woozy here.
Queen of the Damned. This is one of the strangest murder cases ever linked to a horror film. Released in 2002, Queen of the Damned attempted to continue the success of Interview with the Vampire. Critics largely rejected it, audiences were divided, but one viewer became obsessed. His name was Alan Menzies, a 22-year-old from Scotland. Menzies was obsessed. He watched Queen of the Damned more than 100 times over a span of several months and began claiming that he was experiencing visions and conversations with Akasha, the vampire queen portrayed by Aaliyah. According to him, Akasha had promised him immortality, but there was only one requirement: a human sacrifice.
Do you love me?
Yes.
Then prove it. Kill her.
Well, she's nothing to me.
Just the same. I'd like for you to kill her.
Menzies later stated that becoming a vampire required murder, and eventually he found his victim. On December 11th, 2002, Menzies was with his friend Thomas McKendrick. At some point, McKendrick allegedly made a negative comment about the Queen of the Damned. Menzies claimed he suddenly saw Akasha demanding blood, and moments later he attacked. The violence was horrifying. He struck McKendrick repeatedly with a hammer, then stabbed him 42 times. But the story gets even darker. Authorities later learned that Menzies drank some of the victim's blood and consumed part of his skull before burying his body nearby. Menzies would eventually be convicted of murder and sentenced to life in imprisonment, and 2 years into his sentence, he committed suicide.
You called, I've come.
My love.
Never fear me, Lestat. All your wishes have come true.
David Sheehan is with us tonight to talk about a movie that has people passing out in the lobby on their way in or on their way out, David.
Well, you've heard about all those reports about The Exorcist and the trouble it's causing, people fainting and so forth. I went to check it out. The manager of the National Theater in Westwood says that there indeed are at least a dozen people who faint or become ill during every showing. But The Exorcist is still drawing sellout houses for every performance, complete with lines around the block.
The Exorcist. Many people call The Exorcist one of the scariest movies made of all time. When it premiered in 1973, reports emerged of audience members fainting, vomiting, and running from theaters. The movie felt so real at the time of its release that some will say that your church used The Exorcist as fear appeal or moral panic messaging to lure people back to the church. For one woman, that fear would lead to tragedy. In February 1980, Patricia Ann Fraser watched an edited television broadcast of The Exorcist. And over the following days, she became convinced something horrifying was happening. She believed her 4-year-old daughter was possessed by demons. 10 days later, she committed one of the most shocking crimes on this list. Fraser killed her child. And what is probably the most horrifying detail in any of the stories that we cover today, to remove the evil that she thought was contained in her daughter, she cut out her little girl's heart. The case stunned Texas. Jurors struggled to understand what was happening. Was this a calculated murder, or was Fraser genuinely detached from reality? Her defense argued that she was suffering from a severe psychotic break. They claimed she truly believed demonic possession was real. In a bizarre twist to this case, jurors later in the trial actually watched The Exorcist for themselves. The goal was to understand that the impact that this film might have on somebody in her state of mind. Ultimately, they concluded that she was legally insane at the time of the crime. And what's the most shocking part about this whole entire case? She was found not guilty by reason of insanity, a verdict that remains controversial to this day.
Gruesome story leads off our newscast.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment, and now they wonder if they've uncovered some kind of death factory.
The Exorcist III. Now, going into this, I had no idea about any of these cases, but this one really just took me by surprise, because number one belongs to perhaps the most infamous serial killer of all time, and that is Jeffrey Dahmer. When police entered Dahmer's Milwaukee apartment in 1991, they discovered one of the most horrifying crime scenes in American history. Human remains, severed heads, photographs, body parts stored in refrigerators, evidence of murder, necrophilia, and cannibalism. The investigation revealed that 17 young men had fallen victim to Dahmer's obsession. But among all of the disturbing evidence, investigators uncovered something truly unexpected, a VHS tape of The Exorcist III. According to Detective Dennis Murphy, Dahmer had watched that film obsessively, not occasionally, obsessively. He reportedly had viewed it multiple times per week for months. Dahmer said that he identified with the film's villain and claimed he related to the character being driven by evil forces.
The body of this saintly priest is an instrument of, well, you know my work. But the main thing is the torment of your friend, Father Karras.
That's unsettling enough, but what truly elevates this case to number one is what happened to some of his victims. Several of them had watched The Exorcist III with him right before their deaths. Now imagine just sitting in someone's apartment watching a horror movie, completely unaware that the person that you're watching it with is one of the most dangerous predators in America, and he was using that to get hyped up to execute you. One survivor came terrifyingly close to becoming victim number 18. His name was Tracy Edwards. Dahmer lured him into the home with an offer of money. Once inside, everything changed. Edwards later testified that Dahmer handcuffed him, threatened him with a knife, and forced him to watch The Exorcist III. As the movie played, Edwards described Dahmer rocking back and forth while making low chanting sounds. It was as if the film triggered something inside him.
It appeared like it was like he wanted to mimic it or be like that part, you know, being demonized or whatever in that nature.
I'm sorry, I missed
Yeah,
you.
like he wanted that type of movie, that part, certain parts of that part interested him. You know, it was like he changed with it.
The Exorcist III didn't create Jeffrey Dahmer. His crimes had begun years earlier, but the film became part of his ritual, part of his fantasy that he built around himself. And that's what makes this story so chilling.
Told you. We're gonna hang out, gonna watch a movie, gonna take some pictures, and I'll pay you.
So those are the 5 murders that were inspired by horror movies. Did you know about any of those? I know about a couple of the other ones, but what do you think about this? What is the most shocking one on this list? Is it the mother who ripped out her daughter's heart because she thought that she was still possessed even after murdering her? Or was it Jeffrey Dahmer's crazy ritual of watching The Exorcist III with his victims? Either way, every form of art influences all in some way. Sure, some movies may influence people, but can movies create killers? I would have to say no, because millions of people watch horror films every single year. And most fans are some of the most kindest people, most creative, and most imaginative people you'll ever meet. The common thread to this top 5 isn't horror movies, it's obsession, mental illness, and violence. And the individuals who are already traveling down that path before the credits rolled. Now let me know what you think of this video. Let me know if you want me to cover this topic in another top 5 in the future. Also, drop a like and a comment on this video because it truly does help us go a long way. Now, I know the video cycles have slowed down quite a bit on the channel. I've been very busy working on the board game, getting ready to work on an independent film as well. But I have a new idea for a series of videos that I think you're all going to love that nobody has covered before. And we're going to stay in that true crime realm, and we're going to travel down the iceberg of horror movies that were inspired by real life events, and we're going to break it up into categories. I think you're really going to love it. I spent the last week or so compiling a list of movies based around killers and murders, and I narrowed it down from 500 to under 100 films that we're going to cover in that iceberg. So once again, drop a like on this video, comment, and as always, see you next time.
I think you've got to distinguish the reasonable right of any parent to say, look, I don't actually want my children perhaps to have a nightmare or to see things which I don't think they're ready to see or to try to understand. That's fair enough. That's quite different from then spreading that into a generalized, these things should be outlawed and no one should ever be allowed to see them. There is a rising level of violence in society and people are worried by it. And it's very easy to create a shibboleth, to search out a new witch craze starts. And as with that quote I gave you at the beginning, it's very easy to look for something which actually has virtually no connection at all with what's going on and say, let's blame it on that.